but I like to definitely just f around and find out. Hey zine maker, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Bree and I love zines. If you don't know what zines are, they are like self-published magazines, but unlike traditional magazines, they're more rooted in self-expression rather than making a bunch of money. Zines foster community, inform, entertain, and allow the creators to express themselves in a free way, while magazines are professionally printed, they're polished, they focus mainly on selling ads, and can involve lots of censorship. In today's video, I want to celebrate the hand-making aspect of zines by showing you step-by-step how you can make one without any digital tools, the old-fashioned way. There are lots of ways to make zines, and in more recent times people have been making them with digital apps on their iPads and computers, but I just want you to know that you don't need those tools to make a zine. While having digital tools to help you with your zine process is fun, not everybody has access to those. This video serves as a reminder that you can make a zine with just whatever you find laying around. As a zine maker myself, I will say that I do love using digital tools in collaboration with my zines as a form of mixed media. But I'm not a graphic designer. I don't know how to use InDesign. I barely can navigate Photoshop. I actually make most of my zines, almost all of my zines by hand, and then I scan them into my iPad and do some light touches on this app called Procreate. So I'm more traditional with my zine making. A lot of people assume that I make a lot of my zines digitally, and I'm flattered that people think I'm that technologically intelligent, but I like to definitely just f around and find out. So I encourage you to explore and experiment different things, and don't be afraid to make mistakes along the way. I'm no expert at this stuff. I tell you guys all the time, I'm no zine expert. I just like sharing what I know, and I definitely know how to make a zine by hand. So in a world of instant gratification, I invite you to express yourself in a way that's slower, more intentional with your hands. Not to say that making zines digitally is easier by any means, because that's so not true. Sometimes when I make a zine digitally, it takes me longer than if I was making the whole thing by hand. All I'm saying is that there's no right or wrong way to make a zine. I'm not a zine purist, but for me, hand making my zines brings me a lot closer to my work, and like I keep saying, it is so much more accessible to make a zine this way. While not everyone can afford something like an iPad and an iPencil, most people can find stuff like magazine clippings, paper, markers, stickers, pens, color pencils. We can mostly find that stuff for cheap or even for free. So here's an example of what a finished master copy of mine usually looks like before I scan it and make copies. A master copy is just the finished zine that you make the first time, and then you use that to keep making copies. So usually you don't want to give this one away because it's your raw, final version, and then you give out the copies instead. So you always want to hang on to your master copy. Here's one that I made, and as you can see, it's pretty crafty, made by hand. I just made this with whatever I had laying around my apartment, and it almost is like scrapbooking in a way that it's not polished, it's a bit messy, and it resembles more of a diary than a magazine. Zines are truly as DIY as it gets, and that's why I think making them this way by hand is more accessible for anyone, especially if they have a hard time affording things like Photoshop. So let's get started with the steps you'll take to make a zine just like this one. Like I said, you can get a lot of this stuff for making a zine just by looking around and seeing whatever's just laying around readily available for you to use. But if you feel like you don't have enough supplies, you can also visit your local dollar store to get all of these zine supplies very cheap. Some common zine supplies are stickers, glue and tape, construction paper, markers and pens, magazines or old books, scissors, scrap paper, standard printer paper, and stuff you can print out like pictures of yourself and friends or stuff you like. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a standard size zine, which is just printer paper, which measures 8.5 by 11 copier paper, and you just take a couple sheets of those and fold it in half. Once all your paper is folded in half, it measures 5.5 inches across and 8.5 inches in length. To determine how many pieces of paper you should use depends on the final page count you want. Always remember that your final page count must be divisible by 4, because when you fold a piece of paper in half, it's not just 2 pages, but actually 4, because we're counting the back of the paper as well. So for example, say I want a zine to be 12 pages, including the front and back cover. So in order to do this, I'll need 3 pieces of paper to fold in half. I know that I need 3 pieces of paper for my zine because when I divide my final page count of 12 by 4, that equals 3. After folding my zine, I like to number all my pages notes just in case I get too messy and drop them, or if I want to decorate the pages out of order. Then I plan out my zine using sticky notes on each page, or I just use the zine kind of like a dummy or a blueprint of how I want the final zine to look. By making a blueprint, I'm able to organize my ideas in a raw and messy way without worrying how it looks, and then I could just make the final draft with more paper. So do whatever works for you here. I do like using post-it notes because in case I want to change the order of something or put an idea on a different page, I could just pick up the post-it note and move it to another page. I like to use pencil, that way I can erase just in case I want to decorate over this. I think what I'm actually gonna do is just get another zine, like fold another blank zine and just use the dummy here or the draft here for reference. I tend to make a lot of mistakes when I'm drafting my zine, and that's why I like to make a new one. If you think that's a waste of paper, that's totally fine. You could just decorate over all of your rough draft edits, but I just like to start over clean, and I know exactly what I'm gonna do because I'm drafting it out, so I just wanted to show you how I do it. Now that we're all done with the prep and blueprinting how we want our zine to look, now all we have to do is decorate. This is when you'll use your markers, your magazine clippings, your pens, your stickers, and whatever else you want to bring your ideas to life. So I'm decorating with a mix of stuff that I just found in my closet. That's where I keep all of my zine supplies. I have a big drawer in my closet where I keep everything, and I'm using stickers, post-it notes. I found this little image of a composition notebook because I had an idea to make my zine look like a notebook. I was very inspired by the Olivia Rodrigo albums, Guts and Sour, because I think her special behind the scenes kind of like insert in one of the CDs, I can't remember which one it was, but she has something that is like photos of her tour, but it's in something like a composition notebook, and it's very 90s vibe, it's very nostalgic, it's like Y2K, and I was very inspired by that, so I ended up making my zine look like a composition notebook. I ended up putting pages from a composition notebook I had laying around for each of the pages of my zine, and I just went ahead and decorated with stickers, with memes I found online. I put in some journal entries. I also made it so that the people that read my zine can interact too. So there are some pages in there where they can write about boundaries, because that's what the zine is themed on. It's themed on boundaries. So there is a page in there where it's asking them to fill in some pages to help them in 2024 setting more firm boundaries. I also included a playlist at the end. There's a lot of stuff going on in this zine, but I'm just showing you in this time lapse, how I decorated. It took me about 2.5 hours to make this in one sitting. Usually though, just so you guys know, I end up making a zine if I have an idea for a zine, right? I don't usually do it in one sitting. So in this case, because I was making the video and I wanted to stay focused, I did end up sitting down and making the zine in one sitting without any breaks, and it took 2.5 hours. But usually I spread up all the time that I make a zine throughout a week. So sometimes I don't do it in one sitting like I'm doing here, so I don't want you to feel intimidated thinking that you have to do it all in one go. I don't even make zines like that. I just did it this time because I was inspired to make this video. So after I was done making everything, I noticed that the spine didn't look like a composition notebook. You know how it has that like rough spine? So I ended up finding some black masking tape that I had in one of my drawers, and I used it for the spine. I really like how it turned out. It took me a couple of tries to get the spine right because I kept measuring the tape wrong, but I ended up figuring it out, and this is the final result. Okay, this next part is optional, but if you'd like to make copies of your zine, now is a great time to do that because it's not bound yet, you haven't stapled anything yet, so it's easier to run this through a copier or to place it in your scanner. Everyone will choose to copy their zines differently, but I personally like to scan every page and then send them to my computer before printing. I like to be able to view the scans on my computer so I can make sure it's not blurry and that it looks good before hitting print. Once I have all the pages scanned, I go ahead and print a few copies, organize the pages in order, and then I move on to the next step, which is binding. I'm just going to keep it simple and bind my zine with staples using a stapler, but remember that you can get really experimental with this and just try different things. You don't have to be limited to staples in order to bind your zine. You can also bind with things like yarn, with safety pins, keychains. The possibilities are endless, and I encourage you to get really creative with it. Lots of people staple their zines with a long arm stapler, but I staple my zines by just opening a standard stapler and stapling the spine of my zine over a small piece of cardboard, or in this case, I'm using parts of a bubble mailer that I had and I just taped it all up. And this is really helpful if you don't have a fancier stapler, but do have a regular office stapler that can open like mine. And then I just open it up, lay it over my little bubble mailer thingy. It's really janky, but I just lay it over that and staple it, and that's it. And the last step is to celebrate, because you just made a zine. To celebrate, you can distribute your zine to other people by selling it, trading with other zine creators, or you can just give it out for free. When I make zines, I do all of the above. I sell them in my own online shop and do wholesale with local small businesses. I trade with zine makers I communicate with online by just DMing them and asking them if they'd like to trade with me. And I also give my zines out for free by donating to libraries, leaving a bunch of copies in coffee shops or near their bulletin boards or wherever they offer free reading material. I sometimes just leave zines there, and I also just randomly put zines in between books at Barnes & Noble or books at the library. Don't worry if this is allowed or not, and just do it. You know, zines are about being punk, being creative despite it all, so break some rules when distributing your zines and dare to be seen. So you don't need any fancy equipment to make a zine, and if you see people doing that, if you see people printing off like these really high quality, professionally printed magazines, just remember that those are not zines. No shade at all, because a lot of those magazines and a lot of those publications are really cool, but a lot of people with more resources than maybe most of us have, than more than the majority has, they're making these magazines and they're mislabeling them as zines, and I think that that really discourages people from making actual zines, because they see those publications and think, oh man, like I don't have enough money to make my zines look glossy like that or to make them full color. And I just want you guys to know that zines are flexible for that very reason. They're like the exact opposite of a magazine. So don't get discouraged when you see those cool magazines. Just remember, just say to yourself, like, I know they're calling it a zine, but it's not a zine. You know, like think critically when you see stuff like that. Like don't ever feel bad thinking that your zines aren't good enough because you made them by hand like we did today in this video. No, like that's what zines are about. That's how zines originated. That's what zines are rooted in. It's always nice to use the tools that we have available today to be able to help us with our zine making. And someone like me that likes to do the collaboration of making zines by hand and then editing on my iPad, that's a very privileged thing. I'm very privileged to be able to have an iPad to be able to help with my zine making, but it's in no way necessary for you to own something like that or have to shell out a lot of money to get something like that in order to make your zines. I don't want anyone to forget the original nature and purpose of zines. They're DIY, so anybody can make them regardless of income, regardless of class. They've always been about accessibility, and what is more accessible than making art by hand with very cheap supplies or even stuff that you find just laying around for free? Not many people can afford to print in the way that magazines are printed, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of zine distros that print off zines for very cheap, and they exist like that because they know what zines are all about. You know, they know that it's rooted in accessibility, so usually you can go to them and get your zines printed in an affordable way. But I'm talking about printing off super glossy, full color, big ass graphic novel type books. Those are typically not affordable for everyone, so I encourage you to use what's easy to access, because that's what zines are all about. Zines are not magazines. I really want people that are coming to my channel or, you know, experiencing the zine community for the first time, or just see zines primarily online instead of real life. I want you guys to know that zines are not the same thing as magazines. I know that they sound similar and the word zine is in the word magazine, but zines are the exact opposite of magazines. Magazines are cool, and I personally enjoy all types of publishing, but there are just different types of publishing, just like there are different genres of books. There are different genres of printing. Zines are not magazines, so I don't want you to feel intimidated by those cool looking magazines that you see your peers making and posting about online. They're cool. They're really cool, and I celebrate all types of publishing, but they're just different. And zines are a way that everybody can get involved, and we focus on what's accessible to the majority. And zines are accessible to the majority, so I really encourage everyone to make one. Don't feel intimidated by what you see online, or if you see someone mislabeling their magazine as a zine, just understand that that's what they're doing. They're mislabeling it, and continue to make your zines. And don't feel, you know, maybe celebrate that magazine. It's probably a cool magazine. I actually buy a lot of magazines that I see. There's a lot of cool art ones too, but I just want you to understand that your zine is worthy. Just because it's janky or messy or whatever, it should be like that. It should be kind of messy. Zines should be ugly. Zines should be messy. Like, make zines messy again. Whether you're making your zine entirely on a computer or an iPad, or you make them all by hand, or you're like me and you like to mix the mediums, or mix the medias, mixed. If you're like me and you like to make them both by hand and digitally, and sometimes both, whatever is easy for you to do, just do it. Just make the zine and have fun. If you have any tips on how to hand make a zine, please leave us a comment, because this video is just how I personally make mine, and I know that everybody's different. So don't be shy, just share your process with us. I read all of the comments, and a lot of people that watch my videos, if you watch previous videos, a lot of people are very active in the comment section. I like to use it as a community board, because that's what that's what the zine community is all about. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time, bye.